subcommittee members and to Secretary Lutnick for being with us today for a good while. The fiscal year 26 budget request comes at a time of continued fiscal pressure. We must ensure every American taxpayer dollar is used efficiently and continue to work to reduce duplication across agencies and throughout the government. The Department of Commerce's budget request totals $8.4 billion, a $1.8 billion or 17% decrease from the current level. The budget request includes funding for targeted investments in tools to address unfair trade practices and emphasizes important initiatives such as American manufacturing and trade enforcement. Specifically, it includes a 50% increase for the Bureau of Industry and Security to counter threats from China and protect America's technological competitiveness. The budget request also includes a 20% increase for the Census Bureau to continue providing reliable statistics. Overall, the Department of Commerce is charged with protecting supply chain security, economic growth and job creation, weather research and response, and economic data analysis, all keystones imperative to American prosperity. On the international front, the department plays an important role in protecting our industries from one-sided trade practices and strengthens supply chains that are key to ensuring our economic security and global leadership. I've always been a big supporter of the Department of Commerce. The department's core initiatives are vital to small-town economies across the country, including my district in eastern Kentucky. One of the most critical components of revitalizing rural America is expanding access to high-speed, reliable broadband. In far too many places, a lack of broadband access is not just an inconvenience, it's a barrier to education, job creation, entrepreneurship, and even basic health care. From EDA's emphasis on job creation and expanding economic opportunity to NOAA's local weather forecast offices that work around the clock to send out alerts during times of severe weather, the department's wide-ranging responsibility requires clear prioritization and accountability. We look forward to hearing from you, Ms. Secretary, on how this budget request furthers our shared goals of reducing wasteful spending, ensuring global competitiveness, expanding broadband, and driving economic development. Let me now recognize my ranking member of the subcommittee, Ms. Ming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for testifying today. And as a fellow New Yorker, congratulations. We meet today to discuss the Commerce Department's fiscal year 2026 budget request. At the same time, I must express my strong disappointment that we are still awaiting the complete details of the budget request. We are also awaiting the full legally required details of the Commerce Department's fiscal year 2025 operating plan, despite the fact that such details were legally required to be sent to our Appropriations Committee more than a month ago. These delays are unacceptable. They are also disturbingly a pattern that we have seen over the last 4.5 months, a pattern of significant and often illegal actions by federal agencies, including the Commerce Department. In most cases, we have learned of these actions not from the department itself, but from news media reporting and from grant and contract recipients whose critical grant funding and contract extensions have been delayed or frozen, often in direct violation of the Impoundment Control Act of 1974. We have also heard from numerous federal workers who have been fired without any good justification. The National Weather Service has taken a huge hit under this administration. Hundreds of meteorologists and other Weather Service employees were fired or felt pressured to sign up for Elon Musk's deferred resignation program. As a result, the National Weather Service has been scrambling to keep a minimum staff at weather forecast offices around the country. This staffing shortage has also forced the Weather Service to reduce its deployments of weather balloons, which have long provided critical information for accurate weather forecasting in local areas. This is all happening, by the way, right when both hurricane season and wildfire seasons are just beginning. The Weather Service announced earlier this week that it is moving its limited resources around, which will only change the locations that are experiencing staffing shortages. It has also announced that it has received permission to hire 126 new employees. But this is obviously far short of the number of working employees the Weather Service has lost since February. It is unclear when these new employees will be onboarded, let alone when they will be fully trained to the level of performance of the recently departed Weather Service employees. 5 former directors of the National Weather Service who served under both Republican and Democratic administrations wrote an open letter last month expressing their strong concerns. They wrote that National Weather Service staff, quote, will have an impossible task to continue its current level of services. Not only are there fewer forecasters, but there are also fewer electronic technicians responsible for maintaining the critical NEXRAD radars. Our worst nightmare is that weather forecast offices will be so understaffed that there will be needless loss of life, unquote. The administration is also holding back various emergency designated fiscal year 2025 Commerce Department funds. This is funding that Congress appropriated to support weather forecasting, create and preserve American private sector jobs, and protect our national security. Holding this funding back is unacceptable, and the administration should issue the required emergency designations immediately. The administration and the Commerce Department have released some initial details regarding their fiscal year 2026 budget request, most of which I find greatly concerning. For example, the administration is proposing to end funding for the Economic Development Administration, or EDA. Contrary to your testimony at your Senate confirmation hearing, in which you answered that you would maintain the programs at EDA. As you know, the EDA helps create jobs and economic opportunities in distressed communities across the country, and historically, 2/3 of its budget has helped create jobs in rural areas. The administration is also proposing to end funding for the Minority Business Development Agency, or MBDA, again, contrary to your testimony in which you answered that you did not support dismantling MBDA. In addition, contrary to the Trump administration's stated goal of bringing manufacturing jobs back to America, the Trump administration is proposing to eliminate funding for the Manufacturing Extension Partnership Program, a successful bipartisan program that helps small and medium-sized U.S. manufacturers in every state grow and improve their operations and create jobs. Furthermore, the budget request further effectively cuts the operating budget of the National Weather Service in 2026. It creates a real risk of a future gap in critical weather satellite data. This needlessly risks lives, property, and public infrastructure across the country. discussing these and other concerns at today's hearing. And again, thank you very much, Mr. Secretary, for your testimony today.
Thank you, Ms. Ming. I would now like to recognize our witness, Secretary Lutnick. Am I pronouncing that correctly, Lutnick? For an opening statement.
Thank you.
Without objection, your written statement will be entered into the record, and we hope you can summarize in 5 minutes.
I'll do my best. Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Meng, and the members of the subcommittee. It is an honor for me to join you today. America is once again the most attractive destination for investment in the world. Under President Trump's leadership, the Department of Commerce is strengthening American industry, from the most popular to those industries that have been long ignored. We are focused on building in America and driving our economic growth, which will narrow the deficit, and we will deliver a new era of American innovation. Businesses are no longer looking overseas. They are choosing to invest in America first. Through the President's executive order establishing the Investment Accelerator in the Department of Commerce, we have already secured trillions of dollars of new commitments from world-class companies and sovereign wealth funds eager to build and invest in the United States. This surge in investment, paired with renewed commitment to fair and reciprocal trade, is reigniting Americans' manufacturing base. We are bringing car manufacturing back to Michigan and Ohio. We are reopening steel mills in Pennsylvania. And just last month, Arizona welcomed the largest semiconductor investment in the United States of America, thanks to an investment of TSMC. The first CHIPS deals that we are improving now have commitments more than doubling to $300 billion of investment in America. And that's without spending any more taxpayer dollars than those CHIPS funds that you've already approved. So our Commerce Department is driving substantial investments across America and benefiting the American taxpayers. Critically, the President's America First agenda goes beyond just economic growth and investment. The President is taking concrete actions to protect American workers and our national security. Under Section 232, the Commerce Department is conducting numerous investigations to protect, to reshore, and to revive manufacturing capacity across our critical industries here in America. The Trump administration is imposing tariffs and ending loopholes. In April, we ended the de minimis loophole, which allowed foreign companies to avoid paying tariffs on small shipments, which basically undercut American small business. New export controls are protecting cutting-edge technologies and finally protecting our critical industries and protecting American innovation. In fact, the Bureau of Industry and Security, working with our partners in the Department of Justice, we've secured 22 criminal convictions, 32 arrests, 38 indictments, 231 detentions, and seized more than $185.5 million. And then we did other types of seizures for another $40 million. Under this administration, the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office is tackling a mountain of unexamined patent applications left by the Biden administration, almost 800,000 unreviewed patents applications, successfully reducing the inventory backlog for the first time in 4 years. In the past 4 months alone, we have removed 50,000 fraudulent goods and services from the trademark register that block the use of legitimate products by American businesses. Many of these purported trademarks came from what they call specimen farms, that are fake websites displaying products that don't really exist. At NOAA, we are transforming how we track storms and forecast weather with cutting-edge technology. To improve the understanding and prediction of how hurricanes intensify, this season NOAA's research centers will deploy new small aircraft drone systems and additional underwater gliders. This year, the National Weather Service will be running an experimental AI-based forecast system, and all data we will make publicly available. Today, this commitment to innovation means earlier warnings and increased accuracy for Americans, no matter where they live. For far too long, Americans have been unfairly treated by foreign nations because we allowed them to take advantage of our markets to the detriment of our own industry and Americans. Thanks to President Trump and this administration's efforts, we are reversing this trend by reshoring critical manufacturing, eliminating unfair trade barriers and practices, and investing in our American workforce. With your help, we will deliver growth and prosperity across our great nation. I deeply appreciate you inviting me here today, and I look forward to answering your questions and talking together.
Thanks, Secretary, for those words. We have a full complement of members of the subcommittee with us this morning, and for that reason, we will do our questioning under the 5-minute rule. So, Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. I yield myself 5 minutes. You touched on this somewhat already, but I wanted to ask you about the Chinese Communist Party and their effect in this country and our bipartisan concern. From economic warfare to technological threats, China is seeking to obtain advantage of our nation, our people, and our companies at all possible opportunities. Again, summarize what we're doing to strengthen our ability to counter China's unfair trade practices, protect American intellectual property, and secure critical supply chains and emerging technologies.
The Chinese Communist Party seeks to become the dominant culture of the world, and it uses our knowledge, our innovation, and our entrepreneurial spirit against us. It sends hundreds of thousands of students to train and learn here in order to build up their capacity to grow. They copy our innovations. For example, if you see their airplanes, gosh, they look just like the F-22 because they've copied our models and our systems. They are trying to copy our technology, and in the race for AI supremacy, they are behind us, but they are working with the central government out to get us, right? To beat us so that they will have intellectual superiority over us. There is an AI race, and BIS, our bureau, is at the heart of protecting America, and that's why we've sought an increase in the budget, even though we're decreasing our overall budget. We need to arm the Bureau of Industry and Security to protect us and to help us keep key industries away from the Chinese so that they can't just copy us all the time.
The budget request for BIS does not specify any specific initiatives related to increasing oversight of entities posing a threat to U.S. national security. Why is that so?
I'd be happy to detail it either here or in writing, but the idea is to add enforcement agents, agents who carry weapons, agents who go and examine warehouses, examine those people who are exporting, examine the imports, find the particular items, and make sure we have export controls are rigorously enforced. So that is the specific use of the funds, is more people to protect and defend our export controls. The policies the government make need to be rigorously enforced, and we're trying to increase the enforcement capacity because we just don't have enough enforcement agents to do a great job.
Let me switch gears and ask you about the National Weather Service. Kentucky has been the target of floods and hurricane, tornadoes, and everything else. In fact, we lost 20 people 2 weeks ago in my hometown and adjoining area. I'm concerned about the implications of local weather forecast offices operating at reduced staffing levels. Take, for example, the Jackson, Kentucky office, which is currently operating with multiple vacancies and no permanent meteorologist. What can we do about that? What steps are being taken to ensure NOAA's local weather forecast offices have the resources, the technology, and staffing to issue timely, accurate warnings and protect lives in high-risk communities?
All weather collection technology is in full force and effect. Our satellites, our balloons, all sources are in full force and effect. The National Weather Service employs 2,100 meteorologists. Less than 130 took early retirement. It is fake news and inappropriate to suggest a single meteorologist or hydrologist was fired. That is preposterous and silly. Less than 5% chose to retire, and we, using these responsible Commerce Department, sought and were granted the ability to hire those people, the same number. So we will have no reduction in force. Our National Hurricane Center has full staff. And I want you to understand just the last portion, what you said. We have numerous regional offices, which are generally small, and they usually have 3 or 4 meteorologists. And these exist because the data is locally hardwired into old computers with hard drives and green screens. If I showed it to you, you would be embarrassed. The idea is to automate that, to put it on the cloud, so that the 2,100 meteorologists we have and the hundreds of hydrologists that we have can forecast the weather from central locations and back up each other and be more appropriate. So I think the technological advancements we will make over the next year or 2 years will totally change these things. But I want to be crystal clear. Every single person, the National Weather Service, we are at full staff, we have full capacity, and we will have the best forecasting capacity that we possibly can to protect Americans, and I will not sleep if that were not true. That is required of you, of me, and of America, that we deliver that for American people, and I promise you, we are.
Ms. Bing?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm glad to hear the status update of the regional local weather offices. Your testimony and the numbers are really different from what's been reported in the press. We just want to make sure, whether it's New York, my home state, or states like Kentucky, which have gone through such horrible circumstances, and our condolences to your constituents and their families, Mr. Chair. We want to make sure that our local communities can be prepared. I know that you're saying it's inconsistent from the reporting. Would you or your team be able to provide statistics and just more accounting of what has happened where there are retired or layoffs, just so we can all be on the same page if you do think it's inconsistent with the press reporting?
Sure. There were no layoffs. As I said, there were less than 5% retirements, and we have the authority to replace them. But that turnover is historically lower than it has normally been. As you can imagine, people are entitled to retire who've worked at the department. But I'd be glad to give you very specific details. Be my pleasure.
Okay, thank you so much. I wanted to switch gears and ask about the Census Bureau. In April, NPR reported that the hiring freeze and recent Census Bureau staff departures, including those of 5 division or office chiefs, are raising concerns about whether the Census Bureau can continue producing reliable statistics for this country. Acting Director Ron Jarman also recently noted that the Bureau lost more than 1,000 employees in recent months. We've heard warnings that the reports of Elon Musk and the Doge team accessing sensitive personal data of Americans at other federal agencies could also undermine public trust in the Census Bureau. Mr. Secretary, what are you doing to address these concerns?
Again, my capacity to communicate throughout this administration has made the Department of Commerce well situated. We are not losing staff in ways that we don't want to under any circumstances. We are able to fulfill all of our mission at the Census Bureau. The Census Bureau is one of the great statistical places in our government. Our capacity to analyze and statistically think things through. If you couple that in its full, the Bureau of Economic Analysis, right, where we live and we do GDP, that is a great center of statistical capacity. And I think, so we have sought to add to the Commerce Department the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that CPI, I mean, shouldn't we have all of the great statisticians in the government working together? Again, these are the same concepts, which is use technology, use automation. I mean, the idea that the Bureau of Labor Statistics has enumerators calling around and asking for data when technology makes that amazingly capable, and we could do so much better. So we are seeking to use technology, but I can promise you the census is both well-staffed and, more importantly, brilliantly covered by statisticians who are great at doing their job, and I am really excited for the structure of how the census will work going forward. But you won't hear anything about weakness in accuracy. I'm not saying the fake news doesn't like to just say these things, but it's just not true, and I'll happily send you those statistics as well because you'll be very comfortable with the Department of Commerce.
Thank you. And just to follow up with that, recently you terminated the 3 advisory committees. There are also scheduled only 2 major field tests in 2026. Can you provide us an update on the field tests? When are they scheduled? And what are the changes to the questions about race and ethnicity? And also talk about the advisory committees.
The advisory committees were set up, again, many of these things were set up long ago, and they've sort of run their course. And we didn't really understand what type of advisory committee we need to understand how to do a census. It didn't seem logical. With respect to the questionnaire, we have not considered that as of yet. So we have not spent the time thinking about those topics. The decennial census is quite far away, and we have plenty of time to think about that going forward.
Okay. Thank you. I yield back.
Judge Carter?
I thank you, Mr. Chairman, and welcome, Mr. Secretary. My district in Central Texas has become a leader in semiconductor production, thanks to strong partnerships between the state, the local political organizations, the industry, the universities, and the workforce training centers, including programs tailored for veterans and military families. How is the department supporting these types of locally driven efforts? And what more can be done to accelerate the pipeline of skilled American workers entering the semiconductor industry?
Workforce training will be a centerpiece of the Trump administration, and I've been tasked to be part of the team to build that. So if the trillions of dollars that the Trump administration is bringing in to invest in America, to build and to operate those gigantic production facilities, to reshore manufacturing, we need to train great Americans to be We say HVAC technicians. You realize these factories have these really high-tech closed-loop cooling systems. Amazing, but training our workforce to do this is really a key part of the administration. I think we'll train 5 million Americans for these great jobs that are coming, just like that semiconductor plant in Arizona. 3,000 jobs for each plant, and they're building 10 of them. So these are just great jobs coming, and Texas, I know, is going to have a great participation in that, and both you use the schools, and I think it will be an extraordinary outcome for Americans.
Well, Samsung's being a good neighbor in my district, and I'm real proud of what they're doing. As a member of the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee, I remain deeply concerned about the national security risks tied to our reliance on foreign-made semiconductor components. What step is the department taking to reduce our dependence on overseas manufacturing, particularly for chips that support critical defense systems?
Taiwan produces 90% of the world's wafers, which you then chip apart, and that becomes chips. So the United States has demand for 10 million sort of high-end wafers, and we, with the increase of $100 billion investment that the Trump administration was able to bring in from TSMC, we will get to about 12% production. Woefully inefficient. And I think what you're going to see is the Trump administration is going to be very, very focused on bringing chip production to America and the full supply chain to America. That's going to bring in probably between $500 billion and $1 trillion investment. And you're going to see that across the United States of America. And the Trump administration is very, very focused on trying to get up to 5 million wafers during this administration, which will be a record-breaking speed. But I think it's very important for exactly the topic you raised.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm encouraged, we are encouraged by the launch of the United States Investment Accelerator and appreciate your continued focus on revitalizing American manufacturing. Can you share more about how the rollout of this new office will take shape, and are there any early projects we can expect, particularly those that support the development of critical defense-related semiconductor technology?
It has been too slow, the process to build a great factory and a great advanced manufacturing facility in America. Generally, it's taken 3+ years from start to finish. And so the idea of the investment accelerator is exactly that, to assign, if you're willing to invest more than $10 billion, assign your direct contact that will help you with permitting, regulation, and be a one government response to help you take that from 3 years. Let's try to get it to 18 months so we can double our building capacity, focused on semiconductors, of course, but across all industry. And that's how we've been able to recruit over, just the department itself, over $5 trillion of investment commitment, and that we are taking care of how quickly they can build in America.
Fantastic. I yield back.
Mr. Ivey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Mr. Secretary. I wanted to join quickly with the comments from the chair and the ranking member regarding NOAA. And I hear your point about fake news and numbers, but I'll say this. I mean, I have 2 NOAA installations in my district, and headquarters is, I don't know, just a couple miles across the line. And I heard a very different story than what you're saying about people being forced out of there. But I look forward to getting the answers that you provide here. I also saw your comments with respect to Senator Van Hollen yesterday. I look forward to seeing your responses to his questions, too. Wanted to ask you about MBDA, which the ranking member raised as well. During your confirmation hearing on January 29th before the Senate Commerce Committee, Senator Blunt Rochester asked, yes or no, do you support dismantling the MBDA? And you said, I do not. Now, I got the skinny budget numbers here, and it's got EDA and MBDA combined with a cut for $624 million. And in the narrative connected with that, it says that MBDA, the agency, is fully eliminated. So I wanted to ask you what changed and what's the status of MBDA at this point?
MBDA is not being fully eliminated. That's inaccurate. We are reducing it to its statutory minimum size, as is appropriate. The problem I see with MBDA.
Could I ask you before you move on, what does that mean, statutory minimum size?
I mean, it is required by law to be a certain size, and we will have it be a certain size.
What size is that?
It was 65 people. I think that's less than 10 people.
Okay, and why are you doing
These are both
that?
small size. The problem is the GAO gives me a report that says there are 80 other programs and 80 institutions that are so much larger, 10 times larger, that achieve the same outcomes. And we are just too small and too inefficient to do it correctly. So I think we are better served having other programs.
I apologize
take care of
because I've got a couple other areas to hit. I'd love to see that GAO report. I want to know what those 80 other entities are because I'm not aware of them. Maybe SBA has an overlap with the MBDA mission, but the other, I don't know what those other ones could be. But I look forward to hearing back from you on that because I think it's an important agency. It's statutory, so it needs to be maintained certainly at some level. And there's a lot of benefit from it. I would also mention the Congressional Black Caucus sent you a letter on this issue and asked for a response by April 18th. I don't think we've received it yet, so I would ask that you provide that response as well. Let me move quickly to quantum technology. This is kind of a quicker point for me, but quantum computing, this chart shows basically funding by governments. China, as you can see, far outpaces the United States. We've got a couple of other.
I couldn't see it, but I was guessing the top bar.
Yeah.
I didn't need to see the words. I got the point.
Fair enough, fair enough. Well, here's the question, because this is concerning, obviously, and you touched on this a bit in your opening testimony. You only talked about the enforcement side of competition with China, and clearly they are stealing a lot of our data. But they're also committing a lot of engineers, scientists, and resources to outpacing us on the legitimate side of this too, from the competitive side. I don't see that being reflected in not just the Commerce Department, but the overall U.S. budget. IonQ is a company in my district. It's a spinoff from the University of Maryland's incubator. We have a lot of those across the country. Quick point, oh man, I'm out of time already. The cuts that are being made, and there's an article I'll submit for the record here. World scientists look elsewhere as U.S. labs stagger under Trump cuts. New York Times, cuts in research and scientists brain drain. As we push these people out, I mean, you can shake your head if you want, but I went to visit IonQ. And one of the things that came up was, I was like, how many of these people are from the United States? And he said, not many. And I said, why is that? And he said, well, in part because the pipeline isn't supplying these here in the United States, so we go overseas to get many of them. And one last quick point on this. A venture capital firm I had a chance to meet with said that they invest in, I think there are about 30 of these they invest in. They've started setting up shop in Canada because they can get their engineers and scientists from overseas quicker over there. They don't have to go through the immigration piece. So we're losing money on that front. So look forward to hearing from you on that. Mr. Chairman, I apologize for the overrun and appreciate your generosity.
Mr. Klein?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, I appreciate you being here. As you've highlighted concerns about the potential for unfair treatment of American tech companies in the EU, which could potentially force them to make costly operational changes, can you share with us some of the steps the U.S. government's taking to promote a level playing field and prevent discriminatory practices like excessive fines and forced business model changes under regulations like their Digital Markets Act?
This is a key topic for us in our trade negotiations with the European Union. We have a huge trade deficit in goods with the European Union, $235 billion. So they're just getting great advantage of us. And so part of our reciprocity is they also attack our great technology companies because they don't have them. So they write these bills, but basically they could just write America in the bill because they're only attacking great American companies. And it is the Trump administration's view that that is unacceptable. That if you want to have a trade deal with us, you're going to take your foot off of the necks of the great American companies and treat them with respect, especially if you're taking this much advantage from us. So we are looking at that as a one combined way of thinking, and that's why we get calls from American companies that say, thank God someone is finally looking out for us.
Can you elaborate on what steps the U.S. would take if the EU tries to regulate American AI through DMA or other regulatory means?
I think the president has made it clear that he views trade and that they have a $235 billion trade surplus with us. And he will say, well, if you're going to treat us poorly, we're going to treat you poorly. And if you want to treat us well, we'll treat you well. Let's be reciprocal in how we treat each other. You're taking advantage of us, and I think the president will make sure, since we are the inventor of all of the leading AI chips of the world, we, America, are the inventors. We create it all. We make them in Taiwan, that's another topic, but we invent it all. We need to protect our intellectual property, and we need to make sure our compute power is here in America.
Mr. Secretary, in your testimony, you mentioned the removal of more than 50,000 fraudulent goods and services from the trademark register. Can you expound upon your efforts to counter trademark fraudsters, especially those that are foreign entities?
What is common is that a great American company puts a trademark out, or even a young American company, and these other companies, and generally China is the leader in it, but they're not exclusively. They then file thousands of trademarks, modifying it slightly all around it and sort of circle you and use our laws against us. And so the idea is for us to bring technology to the patent office, find them all, and get rid of them so that we can protect our American companies' trademarks and make it proper instead of being sort of surrounded by these AI-created trademarks. And that's the technology we're bringing to the patent office. The Commerce Department is going to be so much more technologically capable when we are done with this administration. You won't be able to recognize it as compared to what was there before.
Let me ask you about the BEAD program. Yesterday, you told our Senate colleagues that states must choose the cheapest option under the BEAD program. Under the previous administration, we know mismanagement and misguided attempts at policy outcomes like rate regulation significantly slowed the implementation of that program. Can you comment as to what steps you're taking to deliver on what the previous president was unable to do, and can you clarify how you define cheapest option?
Sure. The Congress authorized broadband access to across America, and I want to make sure we get the benefit of the bargain, which means there's three ways you can do it. You can do it by fiber, you can do it by what's called fixed wireless, like Wi-Fi, we all understand, and of course there's satellite. Whichever is the most efficient option to get somebody broadband, that should be the only rule. Let's have the outcome be the determiner. And if it's a tie, then of course we don't care at all which one you pick. But don't run fiber. They had proposals where they were running $100,000 fiber to a house that was appraised at $100,000. That's silly. So whichever is reasonable. So what we've asked all the states to do is rebid just with reasonable technology, and then we'll get the money out the door. In the calendar year 2025, the Biden administration had 30 months, and they got zero out the door. So that's the difference between the Trump administration and the Biden administration. We will get the money out the door.
Thank you for keeping the taxpayers in mind. Appreciate it. Yield back.
Mr. Bradley?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for calling us together, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. Also, as a fellow New Yorker, I congratulate you on your appointment. You mentioned earlier the mission of the U.S. Commerce Department, said nothing will take away from our mission. How would you, in a sentence, describe the mission of the Commerce Department?
To protect, to defend, and to enhance business in the United States of America.
And the mission, according to the Commerce Department, is to create the conditions for economic growth and opportunities for all communities. Would you agree with that definition as well?
Sounds excellent.
Okay, great. And I apologize, 5 minutes is so little time. We could have a much longer conversation. I hope we will have the opportunity to do that. I want to also just reiterate what people have said. This is not your choice, but I would pass along to the president that doing budget hearings when we don't have a budget is really hard to do. It's hard to drill down on numbers we don't have, priorities that you have. I appreciate you being here. I appreciate you defending the administration's approach, but it is really hard to do. So you don't need to respond to that. But I would love if you would provide, to whatever detail you can, the trillions of dollars of investment that have been made during the last couple of months and how we were able to achieve the commitments of those trillions. I will do note, because this subcommittee had a fair amount to do with the CHIPS and Science Act, that I suspect much of the chip investment being made, whether it's in Texas or whether it's in Arizona or made in upstate New York in Syracuse, is partly by the bipartisan CHIPS and Science Act. I hope you'll continue to continue those efforts. I have to say that in talking to folks both in my region and upstate New York, but throughout the state and other folks in the business world, what I hear about most is the need for predictability. And I have to say that most of the commentary that I hear from CEOs is the lack of predictability caused largely by the tariff situation has made it nearly impossible, whether you're a business large or small, to make judgments about where you'll deploy capital and where you'll deploy workforce. As decisions are made to advance tariffs, sometimes reciprocal, sometimes and then retrench, and then put them back in place, retrench again, that what I'm hearing, and this is different clearly than what you're hearing, because I feel like we live in maybe an alternative reality, that many people are not making decisions at all on investment because they don't know whether the president intends to follow through. Even the most recent announcements that there's another 90-day pause, during that 90-day period, people are saying, I don't know what this means. Should I move ahead? Should I not move ahead? Are we going to pull back? Are we going to advance? What should I be telling them about predictability, which is so important? I mean, you're a CEO, former CEO. You know this in your business world. Predictability and what you can expect both from your government and from the markets is so critical in making decisions about investment policy.
We had a bad deal in America that produced a $1.2 trillion trade deficit. So fixing that will take some time. It will not take a lot of time, but it will take time. I view letting the greatest deal maker that the United States has, who's in the Oval Office, let him make the deals. He is making the deals. I'm working on them all the time. The deal for America will be opening access to markets that have been closed for hundreds of billions of dollars, and then charging and protecting industries which have been attacked by foreigners like steel and aluminum, where the foreign governments, they give, you imagine, a steel blast furnace. You think how that melts?
Yeah,
They
but
they give free or very cheap energy, and they make it unfair. So we're just going to get to a better deal for America, and it won't take that long, but it's a better deal for America.
Well, I appreciate. I think many people would not agree with your assessment that the occupant of the White House is the greatest deal maker ever. I'm certainly not the greatest deal maker ever. I've never gone bankrupt in businesses that I've been involved in. So I'm not sure I rely on that, but I also don't want to rely on a single individual. But to my point, the advancing of tariffs and then bringing them back and causing, but how that goes to the predictability issue. I don't know how people can rely on what the tariff situation is going to be, even when the courts in the United States have said emergency powers expressed by the president are well beyond what was envisioned by the Congress. So on predictability, I would just say, because I think we'll probably agree to disagree, I would just leave you with what I'm hearing from people is not making investments, not being willing to make decisions because they don't know what to rely on. And frankly, I don't want to get into name calling. I know what people have said about the president and the whole thing. That's not important to me. What's important to me is advancing American interests. And look, that's what we were trying to do in the past for all the criticisms of the previous administration. Both Congress and the administration were interested in investing in core industries that were so vital to our national and economic security. I'd love to talk to you further, whether in settings like this or offline, because I really do think we all want to advance American interests. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Mr. Gonzalez?
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's a breath of fresh air to have a non-bureaucrat come up here and not give bureaucratic answers on very complex situations. So thank you for that. You have a great team. Harry's doing a great job for y'all. You've built a wonderful organization. I applaud the administration. In a very short period of time, President Trump is making America great again, and he's doing it through executive orders. I look forward to working with my colleagues here to make sure we codify those long-term. I'll start off with a softball on trade. I represent nearly half of the overall southern border. I appreciate the work the administration is doing to ensure our foreign partners are aligned in the same direction when it comes to strengthening our economic and national security alliances. In particular, communities in my district, which spans over 800 miles, are dependent on strong, reliable partnerships with Mexico and our Latin American countries to strengthen national security, public safety, and promote economic prosperity. How can we leverage the relationship between U.S. and Mexico to strengthen our North America footprint to compete against our foreign adversaries like China?
Mexico is a huge trading partner of America. What has happened is NAFTA allowed, corporate chieftains to take their factories out of Michigan and out of Ohio and move it to where there's cheaper labor. So they attacked American workers for the benefit of corporate profits. Now, Mexico has amazing assets. They've got great energy. They've got great people. So the idea is let's figure out together with Mexico the businesses that they should be in. They should be in the mining business. They should be in the refining business. There are enormous businesses that would really sit well in Mexico. And so what we need to do is sort of rethink the relationship so that we harness their assets, but we don't do it by stealing ours. It's illogical that we're making cars in Mexico for Americans. That's just illogical, and the president calls it out. But there are enormous things that we can leverage and lean on our great partner just to our south in Mexico to enhance their business and, of course, then enhance the ability for us to import and to do business together. I think the relationship will be great. It just needs to be reimagined in a way that takes care of American workers and doesn't just give them a hard time.
Yeah, part of my conversations with Mexican leadership is we're always going to be neighbors, always, right? I want us to be partners, and I want us to be working together on some of these same issues and find, when Mexico's strong, we're strong. When we're strong, Mexico's strong, and vice versa. When things are rough, I don't want to have security issues along the border that spill over because they're in a tough economic situation. I look forward to working together and finding, how we can find these industries that really that they can lean on. My next question is on autonomous vehicles. The United States pioneered the development of autonomous vehicle technology. We're home to Tesla, whose leadership in driver assistance system position leads us to lead the world in full autonomy. As the Chinese Communist Party aggressively ramps up its own AV development, we can't afford to fall behind. I understand that on January 16th, 2025, the Department of Commerce, BIS, which you spoke about earlier, issued a final rule to safeguard our national security by restricting certain ICTS transactions involving foreign adversaries, including those related to connected vehicle systems and automated driving software. What other actions is the Department of Commerce taking to ensure the United States maintains the global leadership in autonomous vehicle technology.
I would just point out that January 16th is a running out the door policy by the Biden administration. So the Department of Commerce is deeply considering working closely with industry to make sure we are enhancing both our EV industry and, importantly, that you spoke about the connection between AI and really manufacturing, bringing those two together. That includes both advanced manufacturing and, of course, like autonomous vehicles, which is another example of that. So I think we are very focused on that, and you're going to see new rules coming out of the Trump administration that would be more along the lines of what you would hope, which is industry and government working closely together to make sure we're the winner.
Good, because this is the future. This is where we're not reading it in a book. We're living in it, and we need to lead on that. I certainly look forward to continuing to working with you. Thank you again for your testimony, Chairman. I yield back.
Ms. Dean?
Thank you, Chairman Rogers. Thank you, Ranking Member Meng. Thank you, Ranking Member DeLauro. And thank you to you, Secretary Lutnick. Thanks for being here today. I want to pick up on what Mr. Morelli was talking about, and I'll use the word stability. And I think you know this from your many years in business. And that's what I thought about as I was preparing for today. The importance of stability, or as he said, predictability. Stability is the foundation of economic growth. I think you've lived it. Businesses need clear and predictable rules to plan and to invest for the future. Given this administration's claim of being pro-business and pro-growth, I am so baffled by the discussions around trade deficits and the president's belief around trade deficits and the president's beliefs around tariffs and the chaotic tariff policy. They're on, they're off. Many of the tariffs are punishing, creating a level of instability and uncertainty in our economy that we haven't seen since COVID. I hear the same thing over and over from constituents, from small businesses, from bankers in my area. They can't figure out how to plan, how to lend. Businesses can't figure out how to expand, how to grow, whether to hire, whether to not hire. And I'd heard just literally this morning from a very large American retailer. First word out of the woman's mouth was uncertainty, and the last thing she said to me was uncertainty, all surrounding tariffs. The lack of predictability. I also serve on the Foreign Affairs Committee, was recently in UK and Denmark, met with the American Chamber in both countries. Confused, uncertain, they can't figure it out. What in God's name is going on? We cannot plan to grow businesses. We cannot plan to grow growth and jobs. So I am baffled, absolutely baffled, by this administration's talk around trade deficits and tariffs. I fear the administration lacks a basic understanding of what a trade deficit is. I think many economists take issue with equating a country's trade deficit with any one country and its economic well-being. Some economists actually view a trade deficit as a sign of a country's economic health because it means we're purchasing more. For me, I have a pretty large trade deficit with my local grocer or my hairdresser. It's a good thing. It means I have money enough to get my hair done once in a while and to keep food on the table. It tells nothing about my overall financial position. Do you know when this country actually had a trade surplus, Secretary?
The president likes to speak about before.
No, historically. When did we have a trade surplus? I'm not talking about the president. Historically.
I think early, about 100 years ago.
It was the Great Depression. It was a sign of what was going on. It was during the Great Depression. That's a direction none of us wants to go. Tariffs. It's 90 days. We're going to have 90 deals in 90 days. Then there's a 90-day pause. Many of these tariffs, as they say, punishing. Tariffs on things that make no sense whatsoever. Where are we going to go with the remaining deals? I know of one deal that has been apparently resolved with the United Kingdom. We got 89 more deals to do in just a few more days. Where are we on those deals?
We are in the midst of negotiations with dozens and dozens of countries. We could sign deals, but they're only going to get better as we negotiate them.
That's just simply not
Trade-
true, because as I told you, the
Actually, I
American,
promise you it's true because I am doing it. So I
Thank you.
promise you it is true, and I'm here
Thank you.
testifying in front of you, and I promise you it's true.
and Mr. Trump promised to bring down the cost of goods day one. And what he has done through his trade deficit fixation and his tariff chaos has nakedly increased the cost of goods. The estimates are that for consumers in my area, suburban Philadelphia, $2,000 at least a year increases on goods. I'll give you an example of one. Bananas. What's the tariff on bananas? Americans, by the way, love bananas. We buy billions of them a year. I love bananas. What's the tariff on bananas?
The tariff on bananas would be representative of the countries that produce them.
And what's that tariff?
Generally 10%.
Correct, 10%. Walmart has already increased the cost of bananas by 8%.
But as
Recognizing
countries
because-
do deals with us, that will go to zero. As countries do deals with
But the
us, that will
cost
go
is
to
on the
zero.
American consumer now and on the businesses with the confusion now. Mr. Secretary, I believe you know better. I believe you recognize that a trade deficit is not something to fear. I believe you know that predictability, stability is essential for businesses. I wish you would show that truth to this administration, and I yield back.
Time of the gentlelady has
Do you
expired.
mind, Mr. Chairman, if I make one quick comment to the end? Would that be okay?
I'm sorry,
Would you mind if I make one quick comment to the representative?
please.
There's no uncertainty if you build in America and you produce your product in America, there will be no tariff.
We can't
So the
produce bananas
concept
in
of building in
America.
America and paying no tariff
We
is
cannot-
very, very clear.
We cannot
Fighting for
build
imports is
bananas in
not the same.
America.
Time of the gentlelady has expired. Mr. Clyde?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Secretary Lutnick, for appearing before the subcommittee today. First, I want to mention that as I read your biography, I noticed that you have been awarded the Department of the Navy's Distinguished Public Service Award. And as a 28-year Navy officer myself, I want to congratulate you, as this Public Service Award is the highest honor granted to non-military personnel by the Navy. So congratulations, sir. Job well done.
Thank you.
Last November, the American people decisively elected President Trump with a mandate to restore common sense in Washington, including the mission of reducing the size, scope, and cost of the federal government. Thankfully, President Trump's fiscal year 2026 budget delivers on that promise by charting a course to rein in federal spending. It proposes a 22.6% reduction in non-defense discretionary spending, a $163 billion cut from FY25 levels. As a member of both the House Budget and the Appropriations Committee, I strongly support this effort and remain committed to restoring fiscal sanity, ensuring that future generations are not burdened by Washington's reckless spending addiction. And that's right, I say Washington has an addiction problem. It's an addiction to opium. That's other people's money, OPM. Washington needs to go to rehab for this spending addiction, and I was encouraged to see that your budget request reduces the Department of Commerce's footprint by $1.75 billion, a 17% decrease from the FY25 enacted level. And your proposal rightly eliminates duplicative programs within the Economic Development Administration and the Minority Business Development Agency, and curtails over $1 billion in federal dollars that the Biden-Harris administration funneled into radical climate initiatives, research, and grant programs. So thank you for that. The Department of Commerce's budget request also includes a historic investment in the Bureau of Industry and Security. Now, that bureau is also responsible for a rule issued in April of 2024, an interim final rule, which makes permanent the pause on firearm export licenses, severely restricting U.S. manufacturers from exporting firearms, ammunition, and components. This rule shortens license durations from 4 years to 1 and requires case-by-case approval. It also revoked around 2,000 previously approved export licenses, forcing companies to reapply. So, Mr. Secretary, does the Department of Commerce have any plans to rescind this Biden administration interim final rule? How are you going to handle that?
Yes, we're looking into it now, and I find that inconsistent with our views. So we're examining it now, and you should expect us to comment on it shortly.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I encourage you in every way to rescind that rule. I think it's very, very damaging to the firearms industry. And I think that, that's a very important industry in this country because it has to deal with our constitutional rights. Now, I'd also like to address the tariffs and give you an opportunity to talk about that. For far too long, the U.S. has been disadvantaged by countries across the globe due to unfair trade practices. These longstanding trade imbalances have led to the offshoring of manufacturing and have undermined critical supply chains, which have resulted in some of our defense industrial base becoming dependent on foreign adversaries. Ultimately, the status quo trading system that we currently have has failed our workforce, threatened our national security, and left small-town America behind. Thankfully, President Trump is bringing countries across the globe to the negotiating table, ensuring that our economic policies remain America first and ensuring everyday America workers and families do not continue to be disadvantaged. Can you speak to your role and that of the department in the trade negotiation process, and could you highlight the successful trade agreement that was previously mentioned with the United Kingdom that President Trump recently secured?
My role is to assist in opening markets for our ranchers, for our farmers, and for our manufacturers so they can sell their goods in markets that were always precluded from our manufacturers and our farmers having access. That's number one. And number two, to break open the barriers that these countries put up to keep us out even without tariffs. So if we break them down and we open those markets, America will flourish. Remember, $1.2 trillion of us buying from them means 4% of our GDP, the largest country in the world, we're giving to other countries. If we had that domestically produced, our growth rate would be 6%. Our deficit would go away by math, and we would be the winner in the world. And that's what the president's all about.
Well, thank you, Mr. Secretary. It's nice to see a successful businessman in charge of the Department of Commerce. And with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Mr. Mervin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Secretary, it's a pleasure. I represent Northwest Indiana, the top steel producing capital within the nation. With that, giving credit where credit's due, Section 232 helped our steel industry, our steel workers, and also our trades in the first administration. Now, as we go through this,
So they're happy, right? Your constituents are happy.
the market goes up and down, as you well know, in the steel industry. No, they were happy with Section 232. That's why I said I give credit where credit's due.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. So my underlying question is, ultimately, we want to make sure we have a level playing field and capacity in foreign countries such as China. They subsidize their steel, they flood the market, then my steel workers and people within my community lose their jobs. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk about the 50% steel tariffs that are in place now, and I also want to talk about the concern that I have for downstream industries. Specifically, you had talked about in many different areas reshoring domestic manufacturing. I am on board and have advocated for reshoring domestic manufacturing. The time it takes to invest those trillions of dollars and build up for capacity to build, as you had mentioned, cars are being built in Mexico for America. How are we going to invest, or how are you, one, the impact of the 50% tariffs, if you could discuss that with me, and then how is it affecting downstream industries, and what is the plan to make sure that those individuals who work in those plants that are downstream of the steel industries are going to be protected?
So foreign countries subsidize the power, which is the biggest cost.
Energy.
And so China can produce steel at $450 a metric ton. And our price was generally just below $1,000. So they were basically put 40 blast furnace companies out of business. So they basically were crushing steel in America. And Donald Trump came in and said, look, it's a subsidy. So we put on 25%, and that moved the price up to about $900. And then it started to drift down because the Chinese are producing it at $450 because they don't pay for power.
Right.
And so the president said, I've got to protect domestic steel because his view is you can't fight a war unless you can make steel. You can't fight a war unless you can make aluminum. And the steel workers and aluminum workers of America are happy because they're being protected. Their reasonable price point is where we are right now, which is just below $1,000 a metric ton. We are going to build tens of billions of dollars have been committed because of that to building plants,
Can
mills.
you give me examples of the promised investments?
Hyundai promised $7.5 billion.
Hyundai?
Hyundai, you know, the
Hyundai.
Korean.
Hyundai,
yeah.
sure.
$7.5 billion plant. There were a variety, I met with a variety of steelmakers who offered us about $6 billion of 2 new plants. Nippon Steel, $14.1 billion of new investment.
That's a whole nother 5 minutes, but yes.
I believe you. But those are commitments that we have. And in auto, we have $250 billion of commitments because of the tariffs to build and reshore in South Carolina, in Ohio, in Michigan, in Tennessee. These are all coming in because of our tariffs.
Okay. So along with tariffs is the enforcement that you talked about. So one of the reasons why I wanted to be in this committee is to be able to make sure that the enforcement side of it, the ITA, has the resources necessary. Are you here making a commitment that there won't be cuts to the ITA that will reduce the resources that they need to make sure that the enforcement of the products that are coming into our country, that we could track that?
Importing, exporting are key roles that we will never cut, we will only enhance. There are a whole variety of areas within these bureaus that you would agree with me are just not necessary. So we are re-examining what is important and putting the resources on that which is most important.
Okay. I will wait for the second round to talk about the Nippon deal. And just one very quick question. Were you in the room in the CFIUS committee for the Nippon deal?
Yes.
What was your recommendation?
My recommendation was it could be approved with mitigation, change.
Okay. On my second round, and I would like to continue that conversation. Thank you. With that, I yield back.
Mr. Strong.
Thank you, Chairman Rogers, Ranking Member Ming, for holding this hearing today. I'd also like to thank the subcommittee staff for their hard work. Secretary Lutnick, great to be with you again. Thank you and your staff for being here today. Each of you have had a full 48 hours. I commend you for your efforts to prioritize President Trump's America First trade agenda. During your Senate budget hearing yesterday, you highlighted Alabama's role in the automotive industry and noted your department's $250 billion commitment to reshore that sector. In my district in Alabama, we're honored to be home to Mazda, Toyota, and Toyota Motor Manufacturing, where 66% of all combustible engines for Toyota North America are made in our district, 4,000 every 24 hours. Mr. Secretary, what other sectors are you prioritizing investment in beyond the automotive industry to reduce our dependence on foreign suppliers for critical goods?
We have examinations in pharmaceuticals, right? Too many of our pharmaceuticals are antibiotics. You can't fight a war and need to ask your adversary to send you the antibiotics. So we need pharmaceuticals to be reshored to America. We need semiconductors, which we've already discussed, reshored in America. Those are two big items. Aircraft parts is another place that we think there's focus, right? And of course, as we've discussed, automotive is vital to America. Steel and aluminum, which I just discussed. So those are the kind of topics that we're focused on, bringing and making sure that we're reshoring for national security reasons in America.
Thank you, Secretary Lutnick. My home, Alabama's 5th Congressional District, has over 400 companies developing and deploying technologies with various national defense, space exploration, and homeland security applications. Your budget request includes a 60% increase in funding for the Bureau of Industry and Security. How does your department plan to utilize this funding to protect and bolster domestic companies, and how would this funding be used to improve our economic competitiveness and national security?
Export controls, making sure that our adversaries don't get our best equipment, our most cutting-edge ideas. So if we don't have enough agents, we have 2 agents in China. That is just, come on. So we just need more agents to protect and defend our policies, and that is what the request is for. Let's grow our agents in the field to enforce the policies that we make at home.
Totally agree, and that leads to my next question. We're seeing increased sophistication from bad actors to circumvent U.S. trade laws. China is producing goods domestically and routing them through other countries to avoid the Made in China label. Your department has asked for funds to address unbalanced trade through increased anti-dumping and countervailing duty investigation. How will this funding help combat China's circumvention of American tariffs, and what tools or technologies are you leveraging?
Unfortunately, it's not just China. There are numerous countries whose governments subsidize their industries and therefore create an uncompetitive environment, and then they basically at below cost try to export to America, which creates our trade deficit. So we have anti-dumping, countervailing duties. That's the idea. We need to study them and we need to enforce them. And that is a key role of the Department of Commerce. And we need to augment that, and we need to defend it for exactly the point that these, for example, steel and aluminum, they're crushing our industry, trying to put us out of that business. What I loved is that the UK had 1 blast furnace left. They sold it to the Chinese, and the Chinese then got all their customers and shut it. And then they have no steel industry.
That's it. Secretary Lutnick, in 2024, the Census Bureau selected Huntsville, Alabama as one of 6 cities to participate in the 2026 census test run. The 2026 test is an opportunity for the census to refine its operations in a city like Huntsville, which is experiencing fast population growth, making it harder to accurately count. Secretary Lutnick, what will you do to commit to advocating for full funding this year and next to carry out this 2026 testing program, including the Huntsville site? And will you provide a clear timeline to the states so they can begin preparation without delay? And also your thoughts about consistency from state to state, not allowing non-U.S. citizens to be counted in the United States Census.
Consistency makes sense. Commitment to doing the absolute best statistical analysis of the census is easy for me to commit to. We will focus on it, and we will deliver the structure to have the greatest census with the best statistical analysis ever in the United States of America. And that's what you're going to get from the Department of Commerce.
Mr. Secretary, thank you for bringing it home to America. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Laurel?
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. My apologies. There are a lot of appropriations markups and hearings today, so I apologize for being late. And with that, I would like to ask unanimous consent to put my opening remarks in the record. I can. Thank you. And good morning to you all. It's good afternoon now, Mr. Secretary. Let me just follow up on something that my colleague, Mr. Mervan, was asking about, and that was the International Trade Administration, which helps to increase our exports of American products and services, protects American producers against trade cheating by China and others. I think it's important to note to my colleague, Mr. Mervan, that there has been almost a 30% cut to the ITA, $183 million. That's for below what was proposed for 2025. So it was going to cost American jobs, decimates ITA's U.S. commercial service, operates out of U.S. export assistance centers and U.S. embassies abroad, works to maintain and increase the exports of U.S. products and services. So the agency, which is meant to protect, if you will, our exporters, et cetera, and is now being decimated. I think one has to be look at what has been cut. There's the MEP program that I believe has been eliminated. One needs to go carefully through each of these areas and get a sense of, in fact, what is being cut back. And, you know, facts are funny. You got to deal with the details and with the facts. You just can't speak about it and make general statements. And when you cut back on agencies and the way that you have and slash and burn, if you will, then we're not going to get to where we want to go. I want to focus a second on two quick areas. One is transparency in government, because it's critical. Americans need to see where their tax dollars are going. And since 2022, we've had in place, I say that and maybe self-serving, I worked hard on this issue, and we got bipartisan, bicameral agreement to make sure that the executive branch, and I made sure that was in with a Democratic administration, they are legally required to publicly post budget documents. That is how and when, how and where taxpayers' dollars are being spent. They're called apportionments. Put that aside. It's about saying how the money is going to be spent, and that is online. Now, this information is legally required. It's binding on a federal agency. The Office of Management Budget uses the information to tell agencies how and when they can spend the funds that Congress has appropriated. Beginning in March, OMB stopped posting these documents. This is illegal, and it's a slap in the face to the principle of transparency, accountability in government spending, which this administration claims to champion. Mr. Secretary, I'm going to ask for your commitment to once again making the amount-specific budget documents, apportionments, how and where U.S. tax dollars are being spent by the Department of Commerce and its bureaus publicly accessible. Will you commit to doing that?
It's my understanding that my department is following the CR with precision as is required.
No, you are inaccurate, because I'll get to spend plans. We do not have details on the spend plans, which the CR requires, and it hasn't happened. We have a lack of specificity on this is it's more than 5 weeks after the legal due date. We do not have a detailed spend plan as required by the law. Let me go back. Will you commit to getting online how and where the American taxpayers' dollars with regard to the Department of Commerce are being spent, as is required by the law?
I will, of course, follow the law, but it is my understanding, as I've been advised, that we have filed precisely according to the CR's requirement.
I do not know who you got your advice from, but this is the Appropriations Committee. We're looking at every spend plan, and let me just tell you, the bare bones spend plan was 3 weeks late. Surely, in that time, you must have had time to put together a more detailed spend plan. This is false. The law sets out the timeline and the level of detail. This is what is happening is illegal and in contravention of what this committee does and it puts together. And if you can't make a commitment, I take that as no, you will not commit, so that the public has no idea of what any agency in this administration as how they're spending the taxpayers' dollars and where those dollars are going. I yield back and wait for a second round. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for your indulgence.
Mr. Moore?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Secretary Lutnick, for being here. Really appreciate it. A lot of your comments are just so spot on. Just a little while ago, we heard something pretty interesting. The idea that trade deficits are good. We heard an example of, I guess, a banana, the price of a banana at a Whole Foods outside of suburban Philadelphia going up. I can tell you in West Virginia what the generational price has been for the degradation and destruction of our industries in the state of West Virginia over the last several decades, 40 years of it, it has destroyed us. It's destroyed us. And you talked about this blast furnace switcheroo that they had there in the UK. That happened to us in West Virginia. So Cleveland Cliffs and the United Steelworkers Union had requested tariffs on tinplate steel from the Biden administration. We didn't get it. We didn't get the tariffs on the tinplate steel, and we shuttered that steel plant. We've lost thousands of jobs since then, and now there's only one blast furnace left in the whole United States that makes tinplate steel. And I would appreciate it if the Commerce Department would take a look at that, because that is a national security issue, and it's terrible for us. I mean, we used to be known for manufacturing steel. It was hugely disappointing by the last administration not taking any action on that. But I do want to ask this, just shifting gears real quickly, is BIS specifically, and you've talked about plussing up that budget, have you all looked at, and this is during the Obama administration, we went through the Export Control Reform Initiative. This is where they created the 600 series and the ECCNs, and then expanded EAR 99, right? So there's a lot more items that can go out without a license under that. Have you all looked at going back and reviewing that? I actually worked here when we were going through that process, and it seemed, I guess, to make sense at the time, but you do see that it has created, at times, in my view, some gaps as it relates to critical technology. Have you all looked at perhaps reviewing that Export Control Reform Initiative happened about a decade ago and maybe trying to tighten up some of those export controls, specifically on critical dual-use technology?
Very thoughtful point, right on the point, and we are on that topic. We are on it.
Yeah, it occurs to me, particularly when we created the 600 series, which is essentially like a United States Munitions Light series within the Department of Commerce under BIS. This is how some of our defense technology gets out there. And it's very, it's very disappointing. Obviously, this is not the idea, is that, we wanted to increase export capacity for defense manufacturers and others out there, but specifically around some of this off-the-shelf technology, EAR 99 items that are getting exported, I would really like if you all would take a look at this and the way this was set up back then and trying to tighten those controls. BIS is, really the last stop in protecting our technology. Could you talk, though, just briefly, you talked about the steel industry. Could you talk about, from a national security standpoint, why it is so important? You touched on it a little bit, but why it is so important to the national security of the United States to have a vibrant steel industry?
You cannot fight a war unless you can make the munitions, period. You can't make a missile without steel, aluminum. You can't produce anything in defense without steel and aluminum. You must have a domestic industry. The president has made it crystal clear, and I think it is obvious when I say it. And we need to protect it, just like you said in West Virginia. They didn't protect you, and you lost the business. That cannot continue, and the Trump administration will not allow it to continue.
Yeah, and then they just raised the price of tinplate steel right after they acquired it. So,
of course,
after they crushed it. Last real quick question. One issue that I'm concerned about is transformers in this country, which we don't have a great domestic capacity in terms of manufacturing. There's actually one manufacturer of electrical steel in the United States right now, and one, maybe a couple, that can actually manufacture transformers. Myself and others in the Steel Caucus, a few of us sent a letter, obviously not your department, but asking for Defense Production Act to be invoked around that. Is this something that your department's looking at all as it relates to transformers?
We are now.
Okay, well, that's a great answer, and with that, I yield back. Thank you.
Thank the gentleman. Ms. Secretary, the results are in. You're a hit. They won an encore performance. Are you available for a few minutes more for the members that may like to ask another question?
I'm at your service, Mr. Chairman.
We promise you will be brief and on time. Thank you, sir. I yield myself 5 minutes. Ms. Secretary, rural communities, which are often ignored by Washington, face unique challenges, one of which is access to reliable broadband. How's the department planning to continue addressing broadband gaps and prioritizing expansion into unserved areas?
The Congress has launched the BEAD program for broadband access. Under the Biden administration, it gave out no money after 30 months. Our objective is as follows. Within the next 90 days, I think we're going to put it out on Friday, basically saying if your state is willing to just be technologically agnostic, meaning produce the right access at the lowest price, or if it's a tie, I don't care which one you pick, make that application within 90 days, and then this department will put out the money by the end of the year. So we will go from not having given any money under the Biden administration to having the full program funded and distributed, provided they're technologically agnostic. By the end of 2025, all the money will be distributed so that broadband access can be built by the states. That's my promise.
Well, broadband is vital, as you well know. And of course, the places where it is not in being really are the rural areas where it's not profitable for a utility to go into, which is an age-old problem that we've faced before. Let me highlight another important initiative to rural America. That's EDA, Economic Development Administration, particularly the one to have assistance to coal communities. My district, as was West Virginia, had a complete breakdown of the industry over the last 10 years. I lost 15,000 jobs in my district alone. But EDA has been a crutch for us to use to help revitalize and bring back into competitive nature rural areas. What do you think about EDA?
So first, I'll address that the administration wants to revitalize clean coal. We think it's vital to America. And so for both yourself and the representative I just spoke to, you should rely on this administration to bring back clean coal because it is vital. The country needs power. We need power, and we will do that. And with respect to EDA, the same thing. There are many other ways to do it better than to have a reasonably small group inside the Commerce Department. We will stick with disaster relief. We will stick with our tech hubs, but the concept of providing that kind of program, I think, is better served with bigger, more sophisticated programs.
Well, there are rural areas that are not coal dependent. What about those communities?
I'd be happy to meet with you offline and go through it together. You know, I'm tasked with being efficient with taxpayer dollars. And when I get a GAO report that has 80 other programs, I just think it's more efficient to do it in a more practical way than do it in a small way in my department. Not that I don't enjoy doing things, but efficiency is my objective. And I think it was important that I show a budget that was substantially lower, that proves that we can do our great job with less taxpayer dollars.
Well, we want to work with you on this subcommittee. We want to see you succeed because when you succeed, the country and the president succeed. But we have our priorities as well as it relates to offering jobs back home to keep our people from having to move to another locale. So I hope we can work with you.
Of course.
Ms. Ming.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me fix my microphone. All right, we don't need it. I want to piggyback off a little bit about Representative Dean's banana example and how it affects the cost of living for our constituents all across America. You know, I have heard from many Asian American business owners. They own restaurants, they own supermarkets, they own well-known supermarkets like 99 Ranch and H Mart. They are really concerned about the rising costs of goods, like anything from basmati rice to the burdock root to different sauces that are utilized by the Asian American community, fastest growing community in this country. I know that you mentioned, you know, due to the tariffs, the price will eventually come back down. But I just wanted to, you know, make an observation that the cost of living for Americans, as we know, is already high. And it's hard for them to be able to afford these goods and these products that they are using today. And the restaurant owners, the supermarket owners, small business owners are really in a bind because they don't know if they have to raise their prices and pass on the higher cost to consumers or to eat the cost themselves. And coming out of a pandemic where they barely survived, they are now worried that because of these high costs that their businesses, you know, may not survive. So I just wanted to highlight this issue that's happening in my district and I'm sure in many other districts across the country about a lot of these products that are largely not produced here in the United States.
The inflation under the Biden administration was very, very difficult and created a very difficult time for Americans across the country.
Well, the prices have
Inflation-
gone up recently, starting this year.
Fortunately, inflation, as the last numbers were very low, in the low twos, and back to toward the level that the Fed says is their long-term goal. So that's very promising. But I will tell you, in our trade deals, our expectation is for unavailable natural resources, a banana, right, other spices and the roots, the things you've suggested, your expectation should be there will not be a tariff. But when we give that to a country, right, like coffee, right, when we say to Ghana, okay, we will not charge you a tariff on coffee or cocoa, but you will open your market to allow our farmers to sell soybeans. Because you're blocking us on soybeans, why do you expect to sell us coffee and cocoa and not let us sell soybeans? It seems unfair. Let's make that fair. And that's an example of a trade deal. Granted, these are small countries, but that's the kind of model that when we're done, we will not have tariffs on unavailable natural resources, but we will have market access for our farmers and our ranchers. You know, our chicken and pork and beef are treated horribly around the world, horribly. That has to end. And if we use that by saying you can export coffee to us, but you need to treat us better for our agricultural products back to you, I think that is fair trade.
No, I appreciate that. Do you have a sense of a timeline? I appreciate that the cost will eventually come back down, but when my constituents, you know, just average individual consumers or small business owners are asking me when the prices will come back down, prices that have gone up only in recent months after this new Trump administration, what can we tell our constituents?
The president has set out July 9th as the date by which he expects most transaction deals to have occurred. If they don't occur because of back and forth, the president can just set the agenda and say, here's your offer, and set that trading deal in place. And your expectation should be by July 9th.
I appreciate that. And I just, in my 30 seconds left, I want to align myself with the concerns made by the chair about EDA. This is a program that is very important, programs from Tech Hubs, the Recompete program, the Good Jobs Challenge. So many programs are important to our rural areas, to job creation. We know that in your confirmation hearing, you pledged to maintain these programs, and we hope that that will continue. Thank you. I yield back.
Mr. Alford?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I apologize for missing the first round. I just literally ran back from the House floor doing a speech, but that's our job, and I need to get in shape. Anyway, thank you for being here. You're doing such a great job, and we're proud to have you in that position. I know all the good questions have already been asked and answered, but I want to talk about the tariffs just a little bit. The Democrats doubted these, the media doubted it, the pundits doubted it. A lot of people made fun of the tariffs, didn't like them, but they're working. We've already seen the results. In fact, the Congressional Budget Office now estimates the proposed tariffs will reduce our federal deficit by $2.8 trillion. That's a success story. Secretary, what is the strategy behind these? Is it simply a negotiating tool? Is it the art of the deal? Or does the president mean it when he says it about these tariffs? And why are they being so successful so far?
Build in America, in the greatest economy in the world. Remember, America is the consumer of the world. $20 trillion we consume every year. So if you want to sell here, build here. And if you don't want to sell here, pay to come into our market. We are receiving a run rate of $34 billion a month to the Treasury of the United States of America because of tariffs. So anybody who says that tariffs aren't working can't count to $34 billion.
I want to talk about the funding for NOAA and the National Weather Service. Missouri has gotten hit pretty hard. We have a lot of tornadoes. We had a bad spring, and it's still going on. There was a lot of damage in my district just south of Kansas City. We have a regional NOAA center in Pleasant Hill, Missouri. It's a smaller center like you were talking about earlier. And I heard you talking about what's going to be happening in the future to some of these centers. Are centers like Pleasant Hill, which they already have some vacancies, are those regional centers in danger of closing at any time in the future, as far as you know, being replaced by automation and AI in a centralized location?
I'll give you an example in Missouri, which was we have all these research people in NOAA,
Right.
but they were separate from operational. So we started putting them together to take that research and start using it. And what it did is it produced an analysis that showed that we had horrible tornado conditions in Missouri. And so 2 hours earlier than the record ever in NOAA, we gave those warnings and saved 120 people, got them out 2 hours earlier. So we are totally on it. But the concept of having 4 people, and one of them has a baby and one of them's out sick and somehow we're not able to do it 24 hours a day, seems silly. That we should have, if we have 2,100 meteorologists, I promise you, we can cover the United States of America 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we can have better technology, right? We used to have human beings would launch a weather balloon.
Right.
Like I could imagine like someone just going, whoop, come on. It's called auto sonders. We now do it in an automated fashion. So I don't need the person to launch the balloon. So because I can automate launch the balloon.
So I've been inside the center. It's pretty cool. And I used to be in television news there in Kansas City. A lot of my friends are meteorologists at these stations who have personal relationships with the people at NOAA and NWS. I think they're a little concerned. And will these centers be closing, but the information, which is also life-saving, be coming from a centralized location?
I think it'll be both. I think there'll be many centers that will stay and will augment and be bigger and stronger and more powerful. But the concept is we've got to be able to automate ourselves and back each other up. This concept that the data just stays in Missouri and is not available to be analyzed by Nebraska or other meteorologists is illogical. That needs to change. If I showed you the technology, you'd drop your head embarrassed to be an American. When we are done in this Commerce Department, and I'm done with my term, I promise you, you will be proud of the technology in the Department of Commerce.
Mr. Chair, if you would indulge me for one more question. I want to talk about the BEAD program, also very important to my state, very rural state. Biden administration put in $42.5 billion and not one home hooked up. It's a disgrace, I think. You talked about tech agnostic approach, and you talked about the three options. It's got to be a fix. What are those three options again?
Fixed wireless, which we all know is Wi-Fi, right? Fiber, laying cable, or satellite. Any of those three serve broadband, and we should be agnostic to which one.
So some of the folks in my district and state are concerned that we want to get everyone hooked up, and it's got to be the right system. Satellite is not going to work all over Missouri. So we're going to get the system that actually works, right, for our money. All right.
Yes.
I hear the light tap of the chairman. It's a gavel. I will yield back.
Mr. Laurel.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple of things. I gather, and I'm just going to assume that is a no, that you're not going to post how and where, how and when American taxpayers' dollars are being used for what programs. That's the issue of the apportionment, which is again legal. So it's a legal issue there. You're not responsible, but you can get back to your OMB friends and tell them that they are liable for penalties when they come contrary to the Anti-Deficiency Act. Food for farmers. Let me just, what you said there. U.S. food aid programs, cross USDA, purchased roughly $1 billion worth of grain from farmers across the country. So one farmer from Illinois said, to kill that program is a disaster. It's morally bankrupt, and it hurts the farmer's bottom line. USAID spends $2 billion annually on U.S.-grown agriculture for humanitarian aid. Losing even a portion of that has already been a disaster for farmers. I want to talk about the spend plan because, lest you know, this is the public law. This is it, which requires you in the CR to provide a spend plan detailing how you will use taxpayer dollars at the program, project, and activity level. You provided a bare bones spend plan with only account level numbers, no details, no transparency for the American people. You are out of compliance with the law. I'm asking you, when are you going to come into compliance with the law with the spend plan?
As I said, as far as I know, we are in compliance with the CR, but I will happily go back. And
I'm right. Please let us know when we are going to receive the details that we need for this effort in order to be able to do our business. This is an Appropriations Committee. We need to know how much, where it's going, what are the specific programs. We just can't make a decision saying this is the pot of money we need, but we have no specificity about where it is going. And I just might add, you're not the only agency that is not in compliance. So I'm going to ask you, give us a time frame when you can get back to us with the detail.
I will take it under advisement. I will talk to my advisors and
okay, what I was just saying, Mr. Chairman, I believe we need to have an answer on when that data is coming before we decide what it is that we are going to spend and appropriate with regard to the Department of Defense. I was listening on trade deals, et cetera, and this is, I will just state this. We're looking at doing a trade deal with Lesotho. Whoa. I know they have a lot of penguins. I don't
we're
know
not
what
spending
else.
time on that. Don't worry about it.
No, well, yeah, but I think it's important to note that Mr. Musk, who's now gone, I don't know if his contract is gone, for Starlink in Lesotho. Let's just talk about what these deals are beginning to look like. Trade and tariffs. At one point, you said about whether or not the cost would go up. You said that's, quote, silly. That is silly. that they will not go up. I think Congresswoman Dean and I were at the same meeting this morning where the National Retail Federation is beside themselves with the uncertainty and with the struggle of what's going on with small businesses. 99.6% of businesses have fewer than 500 people. 40%, they provide 40% of the wages are paid by small businesses. They will struggle if they're in a higher a tariff environment. And the question of uncertainty looms large on there. Tariffs, taxes on the American people. Let's face it. American people are desperate for help with the cost of living. These trade policies are in fact causing it further. The Yale Budget Lab estimates that tariffs will lower American households' purchasing power an average of $2,500 this year. $2,500, most households who live paycheck to paycheck do not have. Mr. Secretary, $2,500 is not a lot to billionaires, but it's a hell of a lot of money for Americans who struggle with groceries, with health care, and with housing costs. This administration, the president said that costs would come down on the first day. What the administration is doing is making it worse, and the level of uncertainty is providing chaos. It harms our economy, it jeopardizes small business, and it stifles the investment that creates jobs. We need to know what you're doing, how you're doing it. I thank the chairman again, but it can't be, you know, God's in his heaven, all's right with the world. You need to face the facts and be truthful about what's happening with the trade policies and other areas that this administration is engaged in. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I disagree.
I'm sure you do.
Mr. Strong.
Secretary Lutnick, Huntsville, Alabama is home to the National Weather Service Forecast Office. Could you elaborate on your plans to deploy an experimental AI-based forecast system?
Sure. The way we've been doing it is we've been taking data in and doing it consistently over the last 20 years. AI systems can then take the weather patterns of the world, examine how they respond to each other, and do much better and be much more efficient, much faster, and much more learned. So we're going to take research, technology, and the enormous amounts of data that we collect and we continue to collect, and we are only going to continue to collect more going forward, and we will just become much, much better at forecasting dangerous conditions to protect Americans.
We definitely know about those dangerous conditions, and we've seen it in the last couple of weeks across the Southeast. How can we work with you to ensure that my district's existing expertise and capabilities are leveraged to support and collaborate with you during this significant effort?
I look forward to meeting with you offline. I'd be glad to go through that and help you do it together. Sounds great to me.
Thank you. Recent reports by NOAA and other federal agencies have highlighted significant concerns regarding China's distant water fishing fleet. Notably, in September of 2024, NOAA denied U.S. port privileges to certain Chinese flag longline vessels due to their involvement in illegal, unreported, and unregulated IUU fishing activity. Mr. Secretary, given these recent developments, what specific measures is the Department of Commerce implementing to enforce trade restrictions against Chinese food products linked to IUU fishing?
Under the Biden administration, we were not even allowing our fishermen to use our 200 miles of exclusive fishing zone for ourselves. And of course, when we weren't out there fishing, guess who was out there fishing, right? Our adversaries just go in. If you're not there, well, they're going to fish there just the same. So the idea was, first, we allow all of our fishermen the maximum usage they possibly can because we protect and care about American fishing. We care about it. And the second, we are going to hold accountable anybody who poaches, who breaches, who is in our space or near our space. We're going to go and make sure they cannot have access to our markets if they do so.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, the American farmer is suffering. Commodity prices are low. Many countries have taken advantage of the American farmer. It appears that we're buying beef from other countries rather than buying from the American cattle farmer. What is the number one thing as Secretary that you can do to help the American farmer?
We, in trade deals, can open the market beef in the UK, ethanol, corn, right, in the UK, cereals in the UK, in Europe, in India. India won't buy a bushel of our corn. If they buy ethanol, right, then that will help our corn farmers. So we've got to open these markets, beef, poultry, pork. You won't believe how poorly our farmers are treated, our ranchers are treated, and our fishermen are treated. We weren't allowed to sell lobster in the UK. And you'd say, oh, come on. If you read the way we are treated so badly, you would understand why the president is on these trade deals. Make it fair for our people. I always lead with agriculture because we're just treated so badly. If you read it, you would just keep shaking your head. I can't believe it. I didn't know it when I wasn't here. And when I first read it, I said, oh, come on. And it's all sort of old rules that are just not true anymore, and we're blasting those open. And that's what I'm going to do for our farmers, our ranchers, and our fishermen.
I'm thankful for what you're doing, and these trade agreements have got to stop where America's being taken advantage of, and I commend you and your staff for what you're doing. I know it's a lot of hours being spent, but we're in a process of resetting America, and the American farmer and the American automobile industry will be better because of it. Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Mr. Ivey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to follow up, Mr. Secretary, with respect to the chair's questions about EDA. You mentioned 80 programs with respect to, which sounded like maybe the same 80 programs you were talking about for MBDA.
Yeah, from the GAO, and I'll send you that report. You've asked for it, I will find it, and I will send it to you.
Okay, I appreciate that. Real quick point, the prices will come down point with respect to the impact on small businesses and retail and the like. I just want to say that, I've got a lot of small business. I'm sure there are plenty across the country who can't wait. They're really up against the wall right now. The wolf is at the door. Their businesses are at risk of being shut down. So the faster this resolves, the better. I know you mentioned July 9 with respect to the tariffs, and that can't come soon enough. And I hope that whatever happens on July 9, there is some effort to pay attention to what's happening to these businesses in the country. They're multinational, corporations, they'll survive, but smaller businesses that are really, struggling to make ends meet, they don't have that luxury. They don't have that kind of margin. Real quick on NIST, and you heard them, I think, from both sides of the aisle with respect to the need for a budget that gives more detail. And actually, I just saw you testified. I think you said you're reviewing all 5,700 contracts that, I don't think it was FEMA, but it was NOAA. And you said you're reviewing all of them. And so someone who's gonna...
All above $100,000.
Yeah, okay. Someone who pays that level of attention to detail when you were a CEO, I'm sure that you demanded something better than the skinny budget when you were making corporate decisions for your business. You had to. And I know that when you go through these contracts in the way that you are, that's the attention to detail that we want to actually provide in our roles here in Congress and in functioning and carrying out our aspect of the appropriations process. So please give us that level of information so we can do our job carefully and closely too. And then real quick point with respect to NIST. Again, in the skinny budget, there's a $325 million reduction under that category. I don't really know where the money's coming from, but NIST is a critical agency, as you know, with respect to cyber and quantum and the like. You got a letter from, I guess, in concern about this, Software and Information Industry Association, CCIA, ITIF, Center for Data Innovation, a bunch of private industry leaders, TechNet, raising questions about where these cuts are going to come from and what's being done with them. The work done at NIST is not just a matter of maintaining technical excellence, it's a direct investment in ensuring that American industry continues to set the global benchmark for innovation. And We emphasize that NIST work represents a high-value investment that directly contributes to U.S. economic growth, competitiveness, and technological leadership. We caution that downsizing NIST or eliminating these initiatives will have ramifications for the ability of the American AI industry to continue to lead globally. So I share those concerns. I'd like to add to the record this article, Eric Geller, NIST loses key cyber experts and standards and research. For the record, NIST is playing a critical role in our competition with respect to AI for quantum across the board. I don't know what cuts you're talking about making with respect to them because of the level of or lack of detail with respect to the budget. But please be careful in the cuts that you make here. I don't know that any of them are justified necessarily. I can't really tell. But cutting NIST at this time, and that chart I tried to show you that you couldn't see, the quantum competition, we need all hands on deck. This is a critical time for the United States right now. Making cuts to those industries or to those aspects of the government, they're such key players with respect to the industries. This couldn't be a worse time to do it. So I appreciate your leadership on this and hope that you will continue to make sure that the United States can take a leadership role in these industries.
We are not cutting in quantum. We are not cutting in AI, but there are old programs that need to be reexamined, and that money can be used better. And the last thing I would say is we keep talking about small businesses. 90% of our businesses are American businesses, and we keep talking about 10% that import. If you build in America, you're being protected by the tariffs. It's good for small business in America that build in America. 90% of them build in America.
Not all businesses build in America, as you just heard from
90%.
Time of the gentleman has expired. Mrs. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks for hanging around for a second round. I wanted to first, Mr. Chairman, just offer for the record some articles and documents. The first is a Washington Post article of this week entitled, "We Are Witnessing the Suicide of a Superpower." The second is, as Ranking Member revealed, the report from Yale Budget Lab titled, "The State of U.S. Tariffs, June the 1st of this year." One of the highlights, American consumers face the highest average tariff rate they have endured since 1938, the Great Depression. The next one, U.S. Trade document, U.S. Trade Representative titled, "Reciprocal Tariffs Calculations and the Flawed Formula." I'm sure you know this formula very well, Mr. Secretary. It is incoherent and flawed. I enter that for the record. And a New York Times article, April 7th, the Trump White House cited my research to justify tariffs. It got it all wrong. And the final one, which was revealing of my use of the banana here, "Bananas to car seats. Walmart warns of price rise due to tariffs." For the record. Without objection? Thanks so much. I want to ask you about, I was interested in what you said to Mr. Morelli in terms of the mission and some of the language you used, the mission of your department, to protect, defend, and enhance business in America. That was a good summary?
Sounds good.
I think that's what you said. I tried to write it down fast.
Still sounds good.
I just wonder, did your department, did you personally, or your department, whose mission that is, have any problem with the president's recent trips overseas or the development of his business and his family's business around Bitcoin, meme coin, fundraising, or investor raising dinners? Any worry with the Department of Commerce, with the president and his family growing their own business while on the job?
My trip to the Middle East was extraordinary in that
sure.
we came
I'm
home with
asking you about-
$5.1 trillion of investment in America.
Mr.
It was
Lutnick,
amazing.
Mr. Lutnick, I'm asking you, did the question of conflict of interest come up for the leader of the free world?
No.
No? I think you ought to have a team of lawyers take a look at that. It is grotesque, the way this president is using his office to enrich himself, his businesses, and his families. That ought to be something you're interested in. I want to tell you something I agree with you on. and I agree with the president on the closing of the de minimis loophole. You're absolutely right. It hurts retailers when stuff comes in here, package after package, order after order, under $800, no tax, no tariff, no review. It hurts retailers. But I know the other reason that I believe the president is interested in that is in tackling the precursors of fentanyl and making sure these packages don't come in unabsorbed, unknown, and then off to Mexico to only come back manufactured and to kill our children. So I want you to know, I want the president to know, that's a good thing. And I hope it brings great revenue to our Treasury. It should. We have passed on that at the expense of our children and at the expense of retailers.
Thank you.
So please take that back. And finally, I guess I want to tell you, do you know when we met? I don't know if you remember. We met once in Davos. We had a very interesting conversation. And you told me some of your backstory. And this goes back to where I started with stability. I think it is very well known that when you began college, your father died. And what a trying time that must have been because your mother had predeceased. And you were at Haverford, very near my district. And Haverford College said, stay. You stay. Get your education. And you did. And they offered you that stability at a time when you must have needed it most. I had a similar experience. My father died when I was in my 3rd semester of college, suddenly of a heart attack. Difficult. We were all wobbling for quite a while. But his company offered scholarships to kids who lost their parents. And I got a scholarship to go to law school, offering me stability that I had no idea I would ever lean upon. I take you back to that, because what have you done in the meantime? You rewarded Haverford. You're making sure that other kids get that stability. Please take that back into your work in the Department of Commerce. You know stability is what our consumers, our constituents, our businesses, our banks need. This is not stability. It is an incoherent tariff policy that is costing every single one of us.
Mr. Mervyn?
Mr. Secretary, during our first exchange, we talked slightly about Nippon. My first question will be is, with that deal, you said you agreed, and I don't want to put words in your mouth. Were you in the room or at the table for the CFIUS agreement, and what was your recommendation?
I can't really discuss the particulars, but generally, we came to the view that the deal would be good for America. The president came to the view it would be good for America, and we are discussing how to make sure that protects USA and America. And,
So
and
in
those
the beginning,
discussions are ongoing
in the beginning,
right
the
now.
administration, when he was a candidate, was against the deal.
Well, the terms of the deal did not protect America, and he's interested in making sure the
So,
terms of the
okay,
deal protect America.
And I agree. So I represent Northwest Indiana, Gary, Indiana, one of the top steel producing. One of the concerns with the USW, the union, is to specifically make sure that the investments that have been agreed upon, that those
You can say promised. How about that?
See, that's my concern. You're right, promised, based on market conditions. So these are real-life individuals. My father came over from grandfather came over from Czechoslovakia, ended up in Northwest Indiana, worked in the steel mills. Families everywhere around my district. It is our economic engine. You have passionately talked about how it is a national security issue, right? So with that, many promises have been made. First and foremost, to my steelworkers, just a recommendation. The USW wants a seat at the table because they are concerned about disinvestment in their union blast furnaces that will go to non-union shops in other parts of the country. So in my district, which I'm here to protect, that our concern level is to make sure that the administration hears the voices very loudly and clearly from my district, that we want assurances, not based on market conditions, that this investment, promised investment, will protect steelworkers' jobs and tradesmen who provide the maintenance on those blast furnaces. So what are you going to do specifically, not not broad strokes of what's going to happen. Specifically, what are you going to do to protect those jobs in my district?
I agree with you. My understanding is the president agrees with you, and I think the end result of the transaction with Nippon will agree with you.
What are some of the specifics, or can I get a commitment from you that the USW union representation leadership will have a seat at the table to protect their interests in U.S. Steel?
I think the best I can say is that the president understands their concerns. I understand their concerns. I have met with the Steelworkers Union, and I understand their concerns.
Do you understand that this creates uncertainty, unpredictability for families who want to make sure that they have a secure income, health care, secure pension, that uncertainty causes great disbelief in what is going on? And specifically, what are you going to do to protect those jobs? I understand you agree with me. We agree that a $14 billion investment on top of a regular $14 billion investment, that's pretty good. But what are you specifically going to do to protect those steelworkers' jobs?
The President of the United States flew to Pittsburgh and
I saw the press conference. I've got a minute. What are you specifically going to do? I saw the press conference. I saw it. I saw the rally. Specifically what are you going to do?
The President of the United States will direct what he wants to do, and I will assist him in doing so. He knows the Steelworkers Union concerns, and I think they will be very happy with the outcome.
Okay, so time is of the essence. They want a seat at the table so that there's not disinvestment in my community and investment in other parts of the community which would have cheaper labor. I want to make sure that I articulate that to you. Then ultimately, I also want to ask about, with the Nippon deal, if there is reshoring manufacturing and there's a 50% tariff around the world on steel, correct? Nippon now is an investor in U.S. Steel. Please tell me if they are going to be able to circumvent that 50% tariff and ship steel. No.
No. If
Okay.
they make it in America, you don't pay the tariff. If you make it anywhere else but America, anywhere else, you're going to pay.
But are you following me? A foreign country is investing in an American company to circumvent those trade policies, or to the tariffs.
If you hire Americans and you build it here, you don't pay the tariff.
Okay.
So if a foreigner builds, good for them.
Okay.
But in America, with Americans.
Know that, I just want to close in saying, know that I agree a $14 billion investment in the infrastructure of our steel industry is a good thing. But understand how vitally, gravely important it is to the steel workers, to my community, to my economic development, or my economic engine.
Time of the gentleman
You
has
stand up for those
expired.
jobs. Thank you, Chairman.
Mr. Secretary, you have been so generous with your time. I'm sorry that we went over what we had intended time-wise, but it was worth it from our point of view. We look forward to working with you to be sure that you're a success, and we're very impressed with your exuberance in the work that you're upon now. So good luck to you. We wish you well, and we want to stay in touch with you to try to help to be sure everything works out, number one. So that concludes today's hearing. We want to thank our witness, Secretary Lutnick, for being here and sharing with us his plans for the future. Without objection, members may have 7 days to submit additional questions for the record. The subcommittee stands in adjournment.